Okay, that seems to be working on my side. My name is J. Paul Mitchell. Today it is the 29th of February, 2008, and I'm interviewing Eric Damian Kelly. Could you first, just for the record, Eric, give us a quick summary of your name and what you do?
Eric Damian Kelly. I am a professor of urban planning at Ball State University and a planning consultant associated with Duncan Associates based in Austin, Texas.
Okay. First off, what has been your involvement, this would be just a quick response, your involvement in Muncie area economic development? When did you become involved in that, and how did you become involved?
Oh, I've been informally involved much of the time that I've been here, in the sense of staying in touch with Chamber of Commerce staff and economic development staff, and periodically in touch with Mayor Cannon on economic development issues. So behind the scenes, I've had a minor involvement fairly continuously in, I lose track of the dates, but around 2000, somewhere in there, the records would show. When Tom Kinghorn was chairing the current 5-year vision plan, he asked me to serve on the vision committee for the 5-year vision, on the executive committee for the 5-year vision plan. And so I became directly involved in that. My term on that ended probably 2 years ago. And at that time, I was asked to join the Economic Development Committee of the Chamber of Commerce, which I attend when I can, which is not all the time.
Okay. How long have you been in Muncie?
Came here in 1995.
1995, okay.
And this guy told me that I wouldn't need a snow shovel here. And actually, most years he's been right, but boy, not this one.
Not this year. So how did you become involved? What led you to become involved in that?
Well, I'm a planner, and I care about communities, and that communities can only thrive if they have a healthy economy. And it had been very clear to me pretty much since I came here that Muncie's economy was in trouble, and that it was probably going to get in worse trouble, and that people who cared had to try to make a difference in that.
Mm-hmm. In your work as a planning consultant, I'm well aware that you have dealt with economic development issues in other places.
I mostly have not. We are typically hired to help implement plans. But when you're working with communities and talking about the future, you become intensely aware of the economy, both economies that are overheated and growing so quickly the local government is having trouble keeping up, and economies and communities that are really struggling. And they're trying to plan, but they want to plan in a pro-business way and in a way that will help their economy. So we were rarely hired to work specifically on economic development issues, but I was constantly aware of it. The other thing that made me alert to the issue is my hometown is a community, much like Muncie. It's an old industrial city that has gone through its own period of economic decline. And it's probably several years ahead of Muncie in terms of recovery and establishing a more modern economy, but it's still struggling. The unemployment rate there is among the highest in the state. So, and I'd grown up in a family that was involved in economic development. Both my father and my maternal grandfather had been presidents of the local Chamber of Commerce at different times. When I lived back there for a period of years, I was involved somewhat in economic development efforts there. So, this has been a theme with which I've always been familiar.
And for the record, the city you're talking about is
Pueblo, Colorado, Pueblo, yep.
Okay, well, let's move to the question that you already raised. What is the relationship between planning and economic development?
It occurs at multiple levels. The pitch that I give that I think is most telling, but perhaps too simple, is that 30 years ago, site selectors for companies went out and looked for the best deal they could get. Starting probably in the 70s, but certainly by the 80s, companies started using site selection teams that included the future plant manager or the branch manager. And so as I tell communities I'm working with, somebody who's on that site selection team has to go home and tell her husband and kids, hey, we're moving to a really neat place. And if she can't do that, or if he can't do that, you can drop out of the competition. So I mean, that's the one level, and that's overly simplistic. And another simple little simile that I hear, metaphor I guess, is the presentation of the community, and this is the aesthetic side, which is more what Tony Costello's interested in, not much substance. But having a good appearance of the community is like shining your shoes for a job interview. It doesn't make the community any better, but it sure makes a better impression, and it gives you a lot better chance of being in there. And that's been one of Muncie's problems. Muncie has great neighborhoods. You know, as soon as I started spending time here, I started realizing our neighborhoods are great and would stand up to almost anybody's. But you would never know that as you come up Madison or drive down the Galleon or something. And so you've got that level. But substantively, you have to provide a healthy community to attract people to invest in business there, whether they're starting businesses or moving businesses. You have to project that you have a healthy community, and a lot of that is about planning. It's partly about money, but of course planning affects money. Bad planning costs a lot of money in taxes, and we're seeing a lot of the implications of that here. So overall, I don't think that companies that are doing relocation are necessarily terribly sophisticated in terms of looking at planning, but they will look at a lot of indicators that are reflected by the planning. So the planning has to be healthy. Planning can also become an obstacle to economic development. You know, we've worked in communities where the zoning regulations are obstacles to logical types of development. And that is dumb. We spend a lot of time trying to fix problems like that. So the relationships are complex, but I really think that the economy is planning is an integral part of economic development, and the economy is an integral part of what we need to plan for.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me follow that up. Has there been a strong relationship between planning and local economic development in your years here?
There has. Actually, the Chamber of Commerce, the staff in particular, have been some of our biggest supporters for planning. When I started lobbying to have a new comprehensive plan developed here, you know, Dan Allen at the Chamber was on board immediately. He understood exactly why we needed a plan here. First time I ever met Jerry Wise, where he asked me to come to a breakfast meeting, and Jerry's a developer here whom I like, isn't here very much anymore. And he asked me to come to a breakfast meeting with a group of developers, and it was right after there had been a couple of sarcastic letters to the editor in the newspaper suggesting that pointy-headed professors should probably keep their noses out of local affairs. I couldn't tell whether that was targeted at me or Jim Segedy or Tony Costello, but it had to be one of the three, or maybe all of us.
Probably all three.
But I went to this meeting, so I had some trepidation. I'd never met Jerry, and you know, we had orange juice and rolls and chatted, and I said, you know, I got another meeting. Could you tell me why I'm here? And Jerry looked at me and he said, yeah. He said, I can't sell product in an ugly community. Can you help us fix that? So I think in many ways it has been those involved with the economy who appreciate the most what the lack of planning does. I rarely see Terry Murphy that he doesn't ask me when we can get a better sign ordinance for the whole city, like the one that we got in place on the south side. I mean, he's a major advocate, and I actually went to the local government committee of the chamber. I think the city council would pass it if somebody had taken it to him. But as a single colleague, well, I actually may get it done because of last night's meeting. Did you read the story?
I read
this
the paper this morning, yeah.
Well, the follow-up discussion at the end of the meeting was it's time to revise the sign ordinance, so we may get it done. But, you know, I then asked the committee, the local government committee, would you take this to the city council? I'd be happy to testify, but I think need sponsors. Well, they didn't follow through. You know, our civilian leadership involved with the chamber the last few years has not been as strong as one might like to see. But I think the staff gets it, and I think they understand the relationship plan, and I think we've had good support from that. So I think there's been as much relationship as there can be, given a somewhat dysfunctional governmental situation and a very awkward structure of the system for economic development.
Mm-hmm. What happened to the comprehensive plan? What, when did you start to work on that?
Oh, I think we started in '99, and it was adopted by both the city and the county early in 2000. And it remains in effect. It is not always followed, but I think people pay some attention to it, not as much as I'd like. But it's there, and certainly Marge Moody talks with her new members about it. It's available on the web, so anybody can look at it. People never refer to a comprehensive plan as much as I think they should, but it's there, and I think it's a pretty good plan. It's very general in nature, and we've thwarted it in some respects already. One of the things we really need to do is to stop scattered development around the county, and we've not been successful at that. Although I think the current county commissioners get that, and we may do better with that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's sort of getting us away from economic development.
Well, let me bring that back to economic development a little bit, because you have made public writings and pronouncements, and there is that exact issue you're talking about, which is scattered housing development, and that does in fact appear to be impinging upon economic development in the county.
Well, you're correct, because
So
any place that we
care-
try to locate a business, it has neighbors. And the neighbors always wanted to go someplace else. And there is no place else in Delaware County. There is no place without neighbors. I mean, there's literally no place in this country without neighbors. But having a couple of older farmsteads that you might be able to buy out is different from having 15 relatively new single-family houses in a little subdivision that are near where you would like to build this new plant of some sort. And those are much tougher battles to find. So you're correct, that does impinge on it. How it impinges on it more is that our scattered patterns of development have dramatically increased the cost of providing local services, which have made our taxes sky high, which have led to many of our problems, and certainly contribute to our inability to attract economic development.
Okay. Uh-huh. Has there been a change in that regard
A change in
since
what
you've been
regard?
here? Well, in regard to having a stronger relationship between economic development and planning?
It was probably stronger about the time we got the plan adopted. The mayor was fully engaged with it at that point. The mayor and the Chamber of Commerce actually started working together more closely, in part because of some things we were able to do through the planning process. I think there was a more thorough engagement there. The last couple of years we've really struggled with economic development. Dan Cannon, whom I like a lot, I think didn't do a lot his last couple of years, and I think a lot of things have slipped during that period of time.
Mm-hmm. Are there other particular initiatives in Muncie and Delaware County that you have been involved in?
Peripherally, I don't know that I've been involved in major initiatives. But yeah, we did a background study on high-speed internet connections. I did that with a group of students here that actually fed into the economic development effort, but I view that as really part of the overall economic development. I served on the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, which actually did the comprehensive plan and helped raise money for the United Way. I don't think I played a key role in anything in particular.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you have worked as a planning consultant with other communities, what kinds of economic development initiatives have been most successful? What kind of factors has made it happen?
Climate, quality of life, economic stability, strong and stable local governmental system, well-regarded local governmental system, and tremendous energy by people involved, and momentum. You know, one of my funny stories about economic development, there was a guy named Shelby Bill who was hired in Colorado Springs when Colorado Springs really had problems. They weren't, you know, their economy was struggling. That's not an issue now. They're absolutely overcome. And he was staff. I mean, you know, there was obviously local leadership. Bob Isaacs was mayor during that period of time, a very effective leader. And there was local leadership. Shelby Gill was the staff guy, and I'd always heard about him. I didn't get to know him while I was in Colorado Springs, even though I lived nearby. I wound up working in Reno, and by then Shelby Gill was doing economic development in Reno, so I had a chance to have lunch with him. And as we talked, I said, "What happened in Colorado Springs?" He said, "Oh, you don't know?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, you know, the community started growing pretty quickly." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "So my board told me that I should go play golf. And they'd pay my salary and just to take it easy for a while." And he said, "I went out and recruited 2 new industries because that's what I do," and they fired me. But, you know, that kind of attitude makes a difference, but it also illustrates momentum going either direction is tremendously important. Success breeds success in economic development, failure breeds failure. But quality of life is very important in economic development these days. We have some things going for us. I don't know to what extent it's continued, but there was a period of time when there were technology companies moving out of California to get away from the very high cost of living that put their employees under tremendous pressure that they felt led to drug and alcohol problems that then contribute to employment problems. They said, you know, let's get out of here, someplace where there's a better quality of life at a much lower cost. We've got that in, but we don't necessarily have all the other pieces of quality of life that are so important.
Mm-hmm. To what extent did the broadband access and that sort of thing have an impact here?
We certainly increased the awareness of it, probably helped Comcast sell a lot of service. AT&T finally decided, when we started on that, AT&T had equipment here to provide broadband that they slapped mailing labels on and shipped someplace else. They decided not to use it here. I do think our pushing it got Comcast. The chamber tried to follow through and get a wireless service going that has never worked very well. But I think Comcast took advantage of the opportunity, has in general offered terrific service. I know people like to complain about it, and I'm kind of fed up with their cable television because they've had to be out 6 times to fix that. But you know, my broadband service is good, and I think they've done a good job of that. And now AT&T's offering broadband here, and I think we have an impact. Did we convince the community to do anything differently? No, but I think we built awareness and may have made a difference. I mean, you know, when you're a planner, you're never sure whether you made any difference in anything. But I like to think maybe we did.
Being a planner is a lot like being a teacher.
Yeah.
You never know when the penny is going to drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the most important things that you think Muncie should address? And to what extent have they been able to address this in the years since you've been here?
Economic and political stability of our government, and I think that went very well for really Dan Cannon's, well, not his first year or two, that took time to get started, but kind of his 3rd to 10th years, that went very well. You know, he and Jerry Chauvin were able to get the financial situation under control. I think they restored some confidence in government. He had a workable relationship with council. It didn't ever appear warm, but any issue that I ever watched that he thought was important, he would have 7 votes on council. Both of the Republicans and 5 Democrats. You know, there were 2 Democrats who would never vote for anything he wanted regardless. We have clearly gone backwards in that right now, and just even the perception, you know, having our former prosecutor arrested on bribery charges, well, you know, that hurts the perception of government. We've got a judge who is part of the state system, not the city, but he's here, who is under a huge cloud, and boy, those hurt. Those really hurt the community, people. I haven't done much work for developers over the years, but I worked for a developer years ago, a big developer, quality developer. And he hired me. He had an attorney who did most of his work. I came in and helped on some litigation, but then he hired me separately just to keep him from being annexed by a small city. Now, he wasn't opposed to annexation. He had sought annexation of other property to other cities, but he felt this city was so unstable and so poorly run that they would either go bankrupt or they would have a political revolution. And either way, he did not want to be part of it. And he ultimately was only partly correct. They didn't go bankrupt. They probably had a couple of political revolutions. He went bankrupt, had to give up his Learjet. But you know, that kind of thinking, I'm sure he's recovered by now. But you know, that appearance of instability, of incompetence, questioning whether the system is corrupt, which I don't think it is here, but just that question works when you see this much incompetence. I think that's a terrible problem. And I hope Mayor McShirley's going to be able to address that. I think she would like to. I don't know that firing the most prominent Democrat in her administration was the smartest way to get started on that. Even if you need to be fired, that concerns me. So that's one of the big issues. The appearance of the community, I'm delighted to see the new wayfinding signs go up. That's only taken, let's see, Bill Skinner chaired the original committee to work on those. I think it started 10 years ago. And, well, do you know why they're up now? They have been made for like 2 years. I got a call from Kevin Kenyon, who's our Associate Vice President for Facilities Management here, and he said, Eric, you have a student who could work on a project for me? He said, I'll pay him. And I said, well, tell me what you need. He said, the city is never going to get these signs put up. And he said, the only way it's going to happen, he said, they've got people to dig the holes and put the signs up. They don't have anybody to coordinate it, and the engineer is too busy. And I want to put a student in the engineer's office to locate all the sites, to go out and paint on the sidewalk to show where they're supposed to put them in the ground. And so we've had 2 planning students who have worked on that for the last year, and that's how that has happened, working out of the engineer's office. So that's a help. I mean, that's a piece. Having better ordinances on landscaping and signage to improve our corridors would certainly help. The progress downtown is a big plus. It's good to see progress down there. Retail and restaurants are still struggling, but the apartments are all occupied. It's lively down there. That is certainly a plus. That was one of the big problems we were trying to sell against. The abandoned buildings issue contributes to the appearance with the new state law, and I've actually got a group of students working on that right now. I think we'll make some progress on that. But then the fiscal situation is just a nightmare. And our taxes are ridiculous. And it's because we have too many governments. We have way too many. We got too many school corporations. We got too many municipalities. We got irrelevant townships. And until we get some of that cleaned up, I think it's really tough to straighten this place out. And I don't know whether the petition initiatives to force a restructuring of government are going to work. My friend Jim Goodman has been working very hard on that. He says, oh no, under state law they have to do it. And I said, Jim, you have no idea how many ways intransigent bureaucrats and elected officials can find to thwart something that they may or may not want to do. And it's not clear. I really think the county commissioners would like to go forward with it. But if the city council and the county council aren't on board, I'm not sure it can be done regardless of what the state law says. But we certainly need to do something. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I didn't mean to do such a sermon.
Thinking back to the efforts on the comprehensive plan, I remember attending several public meetings in various parts of the place, and when you did the strengths and weaknesses and that sort of thing, the number one weakness each one of those places was government.
Mm-hmm. It was.
What do you suppose the people who were maybe you heard them talking, what did the people who came to those have in mind when they said government is our biggest weakness back in 2000, was it 99?
Yeah, I think we were still looking at carryover from the Dominic regime that left the city in terrible financial straits, $500,000 in off the books unpaid bills and things like that. Even though the a justice center had been open for a while. There was still a lot of publicity over the many problems with the justice center, and just a general skepticism about local government, whether it was honest or not. You know, I think many people thought Jim Carrey, who I think was probably a great mayor, was probably not an honest guy. And yeah, I don't know either way, but I liked him, and I think he was probably a lot better than some of the other mayors we had in here. But you know, there was certainly that air about. I think there were just a lot of things that made people very skeptical about our local government.
Was it a real competence issue?
Oh, it was.
Do they really know what they're doing, kind of thing?
Well, I think you start with a lot of people have a fundamental distrust of government anyway. They want to think that politicians are incompetent and corrupt. And then you get a few incidents that would suggest that perhaps they are, and you know, that reinforces that feeling, and then the perception continues whether it's accurate or not. I think by 2000, I think actually in 2000 the perception was unfair. I think it was more fair earlier and became fair again later. But at that time we had an excellent board of county commissioners. We had 2 Republicans and a Democrat who worked very well together. Were pro-planning, pro-economic development. They did a great job. We had a different city council with a slightly different partisan balance that was working well with Dan Cannon. I really think 98, 99, 2000, 2001 were probably about as good as it's been. And then after that, we lost our 2 good county commissioners to a couple of knuckleheads.
Who were those?
I don't even remember their names at this point, but I mean, you know, who ran on a platform that they would not move the county fairgrounds, that nobody had proposed to move, but they managed to get elected that way.
Yeah.
And you know, that was a comedy. It was a comedy, but it was also a tragedy to watch them in office. I think we're in much better shape now. I'm very impressed with John Brook and Larry Bledsoe. I've had a couple of conversations with, but I was really, first time I talked with him was after he'd been in office a month, and I asked him how he liked it. And you know, this guy's a union shop steward. And he said, well, it's really interesting. But he said, I have to read stuff for 4 or 5 hours before each meeting to be prepared. And I said, this guy's going to do okay. This is somebody we need. So I'm cautiously optimistic again. But we've been through a tough time, and the fiscal mess is so awful. It's going to be tough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are the things? Let's say, what efforts do you see have been directed toward expanding the existing local businesses or startup businesses by local folks? The retention initiatives and expansion. Can you think of examples of success?
The startup, yeah, I think the incubator is actually doing a pretty good job. I think, you know, if you look at its track record compared to, what's it called, the Innovation Connectors, and Kate Frederick, I'm sure somebody will be talking with her as part of this. I wasn't real optimistic when they put her in that job. I didn't think she had the background for it, but from everything I can find out, she's doing a terrific job and moving a lot of businesses through there. And
what was her name again?
Kate Frederick.
Kate Frederick.
Yeah, she used to be at the United Way, and she was their technical outreach coordinator, helped make technical computer services available to those small nonprofits. And I think she did a great job of that, but jumping from that, helping businesses start out is quite a shift. But the feedback I get is that she has done a terrific job, and we're seeing some successes come out of that. You know, a new building is under construction for them. I think we're doing about as much as any community would do in the area of startups. Business retention, other than tax abatements, I'm not a big fan of tax abatements, I don't think we're doing much for business retention, and that's a concern. I mean, presumably the Chamber of Commerce works with local businesses and is supportive of them. If we're doing much for business retention and development of existing businesses, I don't know what it is.
Are you familiar with the Jardin situation?
Well, I understand they're moving to Daleville, right?
They're moving to Daleville.
But they're expanding their operations here?
That's correct. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Yeah.
And Why are they doing that? Do you know what led them to
They
this?
were consolidating some of their operations,
Okay.
and they were going to move.
Mhm.
They did have a competition internally,
Uh-huh.
and they wanted to come to Muncie, and with 42 jobs that paid an average of $50,000.
Wow, that's good.
So
So that is progress.
what happened was that the chamber people tried to steer them to locate those people in the current building downtown,
Mm-hmm.
and that couldn't happen. So they moved to the facility out, the former truck facility
Mhm.
out in Daleville.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any comment on that? I mean, you can see why that would be, I think. It was a labor pool issue,
Mm-hmm.
as much as anything.
Sure.
So they wanted to be out near the interstate where people could live in a variety of places and work for them.
No, I understand that, and I
Mhm.
don't think that's an irrational decision on their part, but it
No.
illustrates the challenges you face in doing economic development for the city.
Right. It helps Delaware County.
It helps Delaware
Yeah.
County, and it's good news in
Doesn't-
that respect, and have the continuation of that long-standing local company here is great, even now that it has out-of-state ownership. I think that's terrific. So that
Mhm.
is a success story, but it illustrates the challenges.
Right, right. What are the things that are good points for Muncie in that regard?
For economic development?
Yeah.
Cost of living is a huge plus. Cost of housing is a huge plus. Relatively easy lifestyle. I mean, it's a low-stress lifestyle here. You get comments on that that are a plus. I think the schools are actually pretty good, but they sure don't have that reputation, unfortunately. So I'm not sure that's a plus, but I think it should be a plus. I think we see a lot of good results, particularly with good students out of the schools. I think there are terrific opportunities for them there. Low crime rate. You don't worry about walking your dog and getting murdered in Muncie. That kind of thing just really doesn't happen very much, and that really is a plus. There are people who worry about those things. Certainly having a good hospital here, having a university here is a plus. All the cultural activities associated with the university, I don't know that our athletic activities are a real big draw to people, except alums who kind of like that, but we have a remarkable variety of cultural activities for a city this size, in part because of the university, but we also have the civic and masterworks and so on, that are loosely affiliated with the university. I think all of those are pluses.
Okay. Do you have any suggestions for the abandoned factory?
Which abandoned factory?
Well, that's what I mean. It's just
Well,
it's
we're
pervasive.
we're doing an assessment of that right now, and I've got a class of 10 students, and we've got a list of 680 abandoned buildings from the city, and we're assessing every one of them. I mean, from the outside, this isn't in huge depth. There is some good news in it. I met with them yesterday, and it sounds like they've been to about 80 of them. The weather's been so awful, we're really just getting out there. But out of those 80 or so, I think there were 8 that had been rehabbed and were occupied. So now those weren't necessarily factories, but we've got all abandoned buildings on this list. But we are assessing them with 2 or 3, well, in part we want to study them and see if we can make some planning analysis and come up with some things. But the obvious thing we're trying to do is triage which ones ought to be the highest priority for the city to try to get torn down because they're so awful, and which ones look like they're really just opportunities sitting there that really could be used for something, and maybe we ought to find a way to do that. The state has changed the unsafe buildings law in the last session, and it is absolutely terrific, and Gretchen Cheeseman is working with the Unsafe Buildings Authority to use that. Under the old law, if you claimed a building was dilapidated, you basically had to go to court and prove that it was dilapidated and condemn it through a judicial sort of process. I mean, the building commissioner could issue orders and say you better do something about this, but they weren't very effective. Under this new law, And the building administrator, the code official always starts with some kind of a warning. But if there's been no progress, then he issues a demolition order, which is a very formal order. It is recorded in the land records. The building then goes before the Unsafe Buildings Authority, which is essentially a show cause hearing, which you don't have to go to court. And the Unsafe Buildings Authority, under state law, can levy a civil penalty of $5,000 for failure to comply, and they can levy that repeatedly for failure to comply. They have consistently been levying $2,500 penalties, not $500, but $2,500 penalties for failure to comply. The softest they have been, and they've had a couple of people who were in progress fixing up their buildings and had legitimate plans, and they gave them a stay, but the softest they've been on most of them, they won't give an extension. They will impose the $2,500 fine effective the day after the next meeting, so that the people can come back, and if they show real progress, they could rescind it at that point. But otherwise, it's been voted, it's done, and that really puts the pressure on. This civil penalty can be collected not just against that property, but it can be collected from the owners personally or levied as a lien against other property that they own. So this finally gives a way, first of all, it's a real financial penalty that starts to mean something, but it also gives a way to start to raise some money that goes back into the fund so that you can get rid of some of these. But the other thing that it does, and we hope to identify, the tax sale laws are now allow things to go to tax sale much more quickly than they used to. So a property that is dinged by the Unsafe Building Authority now, there's a tax sale taking place right now that's out of sync. But if they have a penalty assessed now, it will go up to the next tax sale, which I think is in the fall. And if nobody bids the amount of the taxes and penalties, then that property is knocked off to the county. But then the county can do something with it. They don't have to sell it for full price. And we hope to identify some buildings. We're sure there are some houses out there that you could do urban homesteading, you could get people back into. There may be some commercial or factory buildings that look viable. And we will recommend that those move way up the list so that the county can move against them before they really deteriorate. While you've still got something to work with there, get them in county possession with the intent of getting them turned over to somebody who will put them back to work. So I think there's some real opportunities there, and boy, that authority's being tough, and Gretchen's really working it, and we're going to give them, we've probably got 40 items on our checklist that we're doing for the assessment, and it is in one sense a little superficial because we're just doing it from outside, but they're going to have a lot more information about these buildings. And then I'm going to have the students long enough this semester that we can sit down and look at what we got. Are there patterns here that we can recognize that we can learn something from?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's going to be, abandoned buildings is going to be a problem, particularly the industrial ones.
It is, and some of the industrial ones are going to be nightmares. My stepson called me. He has sold part of his business in Newcastle, and he was looking at buying business in Fort Wayne. He said, well, what do you know about environmental issues? And I said, well, some. Tell me about it. And he said, well, they're in mediation on it right now. And I said, mediation with whom? He said, well, ITT. I said, what did ITT do with this? Oh, it was a defense factory. I said, like World War II? He said, oh, I think even before that. I said, environmental controls were zero and unimportant in World War II, and they just threw stuff every place. That could be a complete nightmare. Philosophically, I would like to see the building reused. Do I think a family member should, pay a few $100,000 for a building that could have 30 or 50 or $100 million in liability attached to it? Probably not. And no, the commercial industrial buildings can be really bad. Commercial buildings are only bad. Service stations can be cleaned up. They're expensive. If you had PCBs, if you had a dry cleaner or you had electric transformers, you got a real mess. And you gotta hope the government's gonna clean that up for you, because you'd have to have a really high value location to make it worth cleaning those up. Now the good news is that under the current laws, to the extent, and the trouble is PCBs don't stay where they are. If you've got ground that's contaminated but stable, and you're just gonna use it for a parking lot, you can just pave over it without having to remediate the whole site, which is an improvement. 25 years ago or 20 years ago, what they would make you do is you would have to remediate the site, as a woman at Oak Ridge, the risk manager at Oak Ridge, explained it to me. You would have to remediate the site as though a family with a baby was going to live there, and the baby would spend 18 hours a day in the backyard eating dirt. So we've made some progress, but the industrial and factory buildings are still tough. But there may be some hope for some of them, and partly depends on what was made.
How have the various vision plans that came up, switch the subject a little bit, what kind of changes do they represent, or are you familiar enough with those? Have you worked on them?
Well, see, I worked on one, and I was there as they developed the next one, and I was certainly looking back on the one before that. Where's this going to get published?
It's going to be in an archive.
Okay.
And online.
I don't think the vision plans have been very successful. And I don't think it's for lack of effort, but I'm going to do a new op-ed piece with suggestions for the mayor and city council, and I'm still pondering over what I'm going to say, because in some ways we probably ought to throw out the economic development efforts and start over. I really think we've been not totally unsuccessful, and people I talk to think Terry Murphy does a terrific job of sending information and so on, but most of the money that's raised for the vision plans goes to support overhead of Chamber of Commerce. That's where that money goes. It doesn't go to real economic development. When Ball Brothers were recruited to come here, Dave Gallagher showed me minutes from the Economic Development Organization then. This was in the 1880 year. You've probably seen it, you're a historian. The Economic Development Organization in Muncie in the 1880s had a war chest with $250,000 in cash available to do economic development. We don't have that now. And that, I don't know, in today's dollars, what would that be? 10
I'd
million
like to
or
have
something?
it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd like to have it.
And I think that's a real problem, because we really don't have much in the way of resources. Roy Budd gets really frustrated because we don't have land available. Marion has done a terrific job bringing in some of these warehousing operations, and are those great jobs? No, but they're big physical plants that generate property taxes. And one of the interesting things with warehousing operations is those boxes go out all over the place and it says originated Marion, Indiana. You build some name recognition there. People start to think, oh, maybe this is a place. It's not the greatest economic development, but would I rather have them than not? Yes, I would rather have them than not if you put them in an appropriate location. I think we're working on a deal that I initiated now that will actually give us some land that we can work with in an appropriate location. And that's one of those little things, you ask me what I'm involved in. I do things behind the scenes. I had several conversations, and at first people thought I was a little nuts, and now I think we're in pretty serious negotiation to pick up 300 or 400 acres of land that will be in public hands at a good location with good access and immediately adjacent to the city of Muncie that can be used for some further economic development. Now, I think we ought to have 5,000, but this 300 or 400 acres that has access and we get city water and sewer is a whole lot better than where we are now. But some of the cities we're competing with do have thousands of acres, and they can give that away or sell it for $1 an acre. And they have a huge disadvantage in not having that. And the vision plans are conceptually sound, but I don't think they've achieved much, and I don't think most people, the major people who give to it understand where the money goes. But I'm not sure that most people understand that most of that money doesn't really go to economic development. It feeds into a complex set of core organizations housed down in the Horizon Convention Center that actually transfer money back and forth between them. And my wife was on the Chamber of Commerce board, and she asked me to review some of their financial statement. It doesn't make any sense to me. You've got organizations paying money back and forth with each other that, say, good grief, I would like to see a consolidated statement for how this whole operation. But it's very expensive. And are we getting value out of it? Well, there's some really nice people down there. I like them. I think probably at one level they do a good job. I mean, you fill out their annual evaluations. We look at the overall results in Muncie the last few years. It's probably time to do something different.
Mm-hmm. Well, they would point to successes like Sally Mae and.
There have been some successes. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
Sally Mae is great. We've got the Caheen manufacturing plant, but those don't begin to replace the jobs that we've lost. And yeah, I don't fully understand why we've lost both of the transmission plants completely. That's just a situation. You know, Borg Warner 10 years ago, we had their biggest operation. This is where the thing was founded. They held an executive retreat here in 2001 or 2002, and now we've lost them completely. Now, I gotta think that's one where we could have done something on business retention. I just have to think there were some opportunities. Maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it frustrating that we haven't been able to do better.
Mm-hmm. I guess that gets to the question of how much, losing a major employer, how much of that is local and how much of that is just the company and they can get it done.
Some of it's the company. I mean, the battery plant, it's my understanding that we lost, was a very sad story. It was actually their most modern plant, but my understanding is it was the only one that was located near other General Motors plants. And they were going to close one plant, and if they closed this one, they could pick up the hires other places. If they closed one of the others, they were going to have to pay them a year or two's wages just to sit and do nothing. So they closed. One like that, you can't win. I mean, I don't know what you do about that. That's most unfortunate. But it doesn't seem to me we should have lost as many as we've lost. I could be wrong. I haven't been on the front lines. Those are tough jobs, like being a basketball coach. But I find it a little frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Do you have your own question that you'd like to answer? Yeah, about your experience, and what has happened in the 10, 12 years you've been here?
I think one of the questions that needs to be studied, and I can't begin to answer it, is civic leadership and what the trend in civic leadership has been. And I think by objective measures, the quality of civic leadership in Muncie, not a particular person in a particular job, it's just you take the people who are on the United Way board and the Chamber of Commerce board and this board and that board and city council and all that, you add them all up. I think the quality of civic leadership here has declined over the last decade, and probably pretty significant.
It's declined over the last decade?
Yeah, I think it has, and I think that's a matter of, that doesn't mean, there's still some very good people out there doing some very good things, but I don't think there are as many of them. And I think you've got some really weak boards that should be leading some much stronger organizations, and I think that's tough. And the leadership here is, some of the better leadership that's still out there is aging. If you want a project done, John Fisher's still a good one to get involved, but John is not going to be able to keep going forever. I mean,
He's
it just isn't
92
going to
years
happen.
old.
Oh, I know, yeah, and he's not going to keep going forever. And I think that's a real concern, but I don't have an answer to it.
Yeah. What do you attribute that to?
I'm not sure, and I've talked with a number of people about it. I mean, at this point, it's partly momentum. There are people leaving. They're giving up. They're not going to spend as much time. I'm not going to spend as much time here, and I hate being that way. But I'd tell you, at some point, you just reach that point, and it becomes frustrating. I don't know. I mean, clearly having the ball headquarters leave was a very dark day, and I still get angry at George Sissel over that. I hold it because they're good friends of my wife and we get together with them socially. But he was the one who did it. There was no question he did it. Ed Ball wanted to keep it here. I think John Fisher would have preferred to stay here. George pushed it and got it done.
What do you think was his real reason for that? I mean, everybody has ideas. But
Oh, he grew up in Colorado. I mean, he was going home. I don't think that was just it. I mean, that's where their largest employment base was and all. I mean, there was some logic to it from a business decision. But there are a lot of corporate headquarters that aren't located where their major operations are.
Mhm.
And I don't know, but I think he just decided it was the right thing to do, and Muncie be damned, and it's too bad. I mean, he came here fairly low down on the totem pole. He did very well in Muncie,
Mhm.
working up through the system.
Mhm. Well, let's go back to one of your earlier comments about when someone is looking for a place and they bring the plant manager in, and the plant manager has to convince his or her spouse that, yeah, we want to live there.
Mm-hmm.
What about the fact that as you worked your way up the hierarchy in Ball Corporation, you got to move from California or Boulder, Colorado to Muncie? Do you think that was a factor?
I knew a lot of those senior executives when they were here. We still stay in touch with some of them. I think they liked it here. You know, I think Muncie's a community that once you're here. I was at Rotary this morning, and had a fascinating program. An associate professor with the IU School of Medicine here gave a program, and what he was supposed to talk about was this brain bee program that they've set up, which is like a spelling bee for high school students, but they run them through a course first, and then they do the contest, and then they send them on to an international competition. But what he started out doing was talking about the way he sees the School of Medicine here, and I did not realize they're now going to have third and fourth year students here. So you'll be able to do your whole medical degree here. It's previously just been first and second. But he started talking about why that was important, because he said, what we find is the doctors who study here will stay here. And so we're viewing this as a very important long-term recruiting effort. And we want to recruit these high school students because we want them to go to Ball State, where they can work with some of us and then come on to our med school and then do their residency here. And he said, they'll stay here. And he said, you know, we're early in tracking this stuff, but he said, so far it appears that the students who do 2 years of med school here are more likely to come back here and practice than others. The ones who do 2 years of med school here and then their residency here are much more likely to stay here than others, so they're working on that. So I think Muncie's a community. You know, I like Muncie. I call it my adopted hometown. And there are a lot of I'm frustrated right now. My wife thinks I'm more negative about Muncie than I've ever been. Unfortunately, my wife thinks I'm too negative at this point, but I tend to be too positive and too optimistic. But I think Muncie's a place that if you live here, you learn to like it. So I don't really think those people moved away because they didn't like it. You know, Dave Hoover grew up around here. This is his home. And yeah, I don't think that was it. I think there was more to it than that. And again, from a business perspective, should they put their headquarters where their biggest employment base is? Yeah, there's some merit in it. I mean, I can't say he was wrong, but it still ticks me off.
Yeah. Well, I would just wonder if you're going to get the promotion, which you can't very well turn down. You decide, no, I'm going to look for work in Denver.
I don't think that happened. They
here.
moved a lot of people from Denver here, and some of them went, you know, they've come both ways. And again, Dave Hoover became the next CEO. He's from around here.
Right.
Suzanne's, one of their mothers is still at Westminster. So, you know, they still have contacts here and all. Wouldn't have been a hard sell to get David to stay here.
Well, are you aware of any really stellar successes in retention or economic development here, or in any egregious failures?
In Muncie?
Yeah.
Well, I
that
mean,
you would see.
Kane is a success. Magna Drivetrain is a success. Sally Mae is a success. You know, and I think those are all good employers, which is nice. That, you know, I think they treat their employees well. They're good places to work, and I like all of them. No, there have certainly been some successes. egregious failures, I don't know, 'cause that stuff stays confidential, you know, I sometimes know what's going on, but I mean, I think the egregious failure is the overall trends. We haven't brought in a lot of new industry, you know, my hometown's about the size of Muncie and so on, and it's had its ups and downs, but, you know, we've got Magna Drivetrain and Caving and Sally Mae, what else? We probably have a couple other little things. You know, Pueblo's probably brought in a comparable period of time, 8 or 10 businesses. Of, you know, maybe not all quite as good quality employers, but you know, they've brought in a lot.
Mhm.
And a couple of them haven't survived, but and Muncie's got the same issues as Pueblo. I mean, Pueblo is not a beautiful city to drive into. It's a lot more attractive than it once was because the old steel mill has been torn down, and that was one of the main things you saw as you drove into the city. But it's also a community that's a great place to live. They've got 60 or 70 miles of local trails and wonderful local parks and a lot of things going on. But it's a place that people have to be to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I just think, I don't know if there are any egregious failures except the overall track record, and I don't know if that's an egregious failure. You know, there are certainly other communities that have probably done worse, but I gotta think we could do better, given the assets and resources we have here. But that doesn't mean I think I could do better. I mean, you know, it's a tough job.
Yeah.
It's a tough job.
Okay. Well, do you have any other?
I don't think so. Does that help you at all?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
So what
Okay.
do you do about this? Are you going to do a publication of some sort, or are you just going to archive the interviews, or?